kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te ātakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Cease the winds from the west, cease the winds from the south. Let the breeze blow over the land, let the breeze blow over the ocean. Let the red-tipped dawn come with a sharpened ear, a touch of frost, a promise of a glorious day. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. And that gave you a bit of a rest, changing around. Okay, and I'd also like to, if we can stop the gossiping between Mr. Maxwell and Mr. Barker, that would be good. You just keep them apart.
I'll try. I'm a hopeless case.
We're talking about Maori language here.
Okay. So welcome everybody. Welcome to our staff. Apologies, of course, from James, who's having a well-deserved holiday with his family. I'd like to welcome the public. Also here, drifting off to sleep, right? I'm looking forward to having a really good meeting. So, any other apologies apart from James? If not, can we move those apologies, please? Councillor Barker.
Seconded.
Seconded, Gerard. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any notices? If there are no notices, we will move on. Conflict of interest, it's different from what you've already declared. Any new conflict of interests? None, that is good. Confirmation of the minutes of the 18th. Now, are you all getting copies of these minutes?
Yep.
Thank you, good. Are there any corrections to the minutes? No corrections. Do I have a mover?
Yes.
Anyway, and Gerard, all those in favour?
Aye.
The minutes are confirmed. Follow-ups from previous meetings. Who's taking us through those follow-ups?
Well, the paper's there. We'll take the papers read if you're doing them. We read it. I'm happy to move the papers read unless people's got any questions.
I just in case, Rick, anyone else, there's the building discussions underway. I've also just put on the table and had discussions with some appropriate people about that building. So hopefully we get a resolve that this council is looking for. Are there any other issues? If there's no other issues, do we have a mover that we cover? Rick will, and Craig's looking really determined. Will you second that? So we approve the follow-ups?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Call for minor items not on the agenda. Yes. Nicely raised hand.
Yes, so I've been back to school, Primer 1. I have 2 items, Chair. One is buses. The second is dates.
Buses, dates.
Date.
Or date.
Any other date or dates?
Monday.
Okay, cross out the S, Rex. Any other follow-ups? I'd just like to say, councillors, before we go on, and just so just put it on the record, so everyone knows that we councillors have had nearly 2 hours where we had a chat, and I thought it was a really rewarding catch-up, and it looks like that's a kaupapa that everybody enjoyed, and we will definitely continue. Thank you very much. So we go straight to decision items. Item 6. Report from the Environmental Committee, so we'll ask the Chair to please report on that paper.
Thank you, Chair. This was a very worthwhile report, meeting. I think the report says all that's needed. I'm sure people have read the report, and I'm very happy to move the report be received. And just note that we're going to have the follow-ups on the Pandora Pond, water quality, right tree, right place. All of these open up a whole range of bigger discussions for us later on through Australian. And I think this committee is going to lead a number of really challenging and important debates for this region.
Thank you, Rick. I was just, before I go to Haniwa, I'd like her to comment too on the report. I'd just like to see include regional parks and under policy. I didn't regional parks
reference.
in the terms of reference.
Happy to do that. What I have been doing is having discussions with the leadership team, and what we're aiming to do is to come back with an outline of the work for this committee over the next 3 years, and to have it, as I would describe it, as a dashboard with items on it. And I would think one of those items will be regional parks. So we'll have regional parks in it, and seeing that on a regular, ongoing basis, so we can monitor progress, set out what our targets are, and monitor our progress. So make a note of that.
Thank you, Chair. Would you mind having it included in the terms of reference?
Yes, have it in the terms of reference.
Thank you. Anyway, any comments?
You know, I thought it was a positive meeting moving forward, but like Rick, I think we need to understand what we're monitoring at the moment, look at trends moving forward, and how we can reach those targets year on year. So without having the notes in front of me, because our great iPads are frozen, mine is frozen. But what I can recall from that meeting, it was really positive, and right tree, right place for the right purpose is something I'm really interested in. So, yeah, that's all I would say with that.
Are there any other questions? Or
Just a point of procedure. Are we formally moving an amendment to the terms of reference? Do we need to do that by way of resolution? Does it need to go to the committee next week first? What's the setup?
I thought what we would do is, moving the adoption of the report, I was accepting an amendment on that from the chair that we include parks. It'll be amended to include parks as part of that resolution.
yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, Rick, will you move
I've moved it.
report, and Henry, are you second? Are there any speakers on this?
Just a clarification, all the various QE2 and similar blocks fit under your examination?
QE2 belongs to another specific area of government.
Yeah, I realise that, but there's a lot of them across the bay.
Yeah, well, we've never had a specific list of them and never interacted with them in particular. No, we don't.
Okay.
Because they're on private land and they're covenanted, but they're still on private land, so not our land, but the covenants.
Okay. It might be helpful to have that awareness of how much we have of QE2 in the bay.
Well, it'd be worthwhile looking at, yes. Yeah. I'll certainly ask a question about that.
Any other comments? If not, I just want to raise one thing that came up in our council-only session. It's one that's close to my heart too. That is stock banks. Just want to raise the fact that, you know, I know you guys are aware of it, and I know Chris is right onto this, but if we're going to get caught, it will be large amount of rain in the hills, 10 inches or plus, high seas, and our stock banks will come under huge pressure. And we know what happens, the politicians get the blame. So it was raised. So, our chair and our group manager, stock banks is really important to this region.
So it's worth noting at the EICC meeting next week, we do have a paper on the Heratonga scheme and our plans addressing improved level of service, so we can take you through that detail next week.
Excellent, thank you very
If I
much.
can just respond as well, Chair, to say that one of the stop banks were one of the discussions we had when we were considering what to do with Wharf 6 and the port. And this council made a decision to float 45% of the shares in the port rather than invest money for Wharf 6 to ensure that it had the financial capacity to deal with stop banks. So we have already made the long-term strategic decision about how to fund this. What we're now on to is the second phase, is what needs to be done. So we're looking for this paper to come forward, which will outline the framework by which we need to proceed. There'll need to be considerable engineering work done to examine exactly what the status is of all of our stop banks, the land under them, and a plan of how we would go forward for designing what is necessary and then seeing what designs are necessary for change. So I would see this as an evolving thing will come out, and once we have the first 2 or 3 Environment Committee meetings, I think you will have a very clear outline of the plan forward, and you will have confidence in what we're doing, and you'll be able to convey confidence.
That is an excellent dissertation, Rick. Thank you very much. That's we're looking forward to that, aren't we, Martin?
Absolutely. I fully support what Councillor Barker has just outlined. This is a dominant governance priority as I see it, but we need to make sure that the resource provision is there through our long-term and annual plan process. So looking forward to the paper about how we can do that. thank you for reminding us, Councillor Barker, as to our reason for the capacity to do so.
Any other comment? Otherwise, I'll move. We have a mover and a seconder.
Aye.
To accept all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? We accept the decisions of the Environmental and Catchment Committee. So, item 7, a report from the Regional Transport Committee. Martin?
Thank you. You do have a brief summary of the outcomes of that meeting. It was the first, as you weren't present other than Charlie, it was the first meeting that I've had the opportunity to be part of and I chaired it, obviously. So it's an early stage in terms of an exciting opportunity ahead of both myself and this council. Just a couple of aspects I'd like to drill down into. We obviously had the usual briefings and the very helpful briefings from Anne and Tom and from NZTA about the work that's going on in this area in transport terms. The particular points of note would be the transport study we're doing to set a baseline of actually what's going on in terms of utilisation of transportation resources in this region, which then enables us to engage in some strategic thinking ahead of the Regional Land Transport Plan Review, which is 2021, which, believe it or not, is next year. And the first step in that is something that's touched on in the minutes of the committee meeting, but not in the summary, is an idea we've floated for, in fact I floated for a workshop session right up front in March, hopefully, at which we get some real blue skies thinking with our mayors engaged, with some experts in innovative ways to utilise transportation resources more efficiently for climate change purposes, but equally just the overall resilience and efficiency of the network, and to get those advice streams in early and to really be proactive thought leaders and operators around transport in New Zealand as a region. So that's a really exciting opportunity, and we want to get stuck into that. And I know there was a lot of enthusiasm around the table for that undertaking. So those are the 2 points I really wanted to highlight. You are invited to look at the minutes of that committee meeting as to specific things that are happening with our network at the moment. And there's a walking and cycling summit coming up on the 13th of March where the Associate Minister of Transport will be present, and I think a few councillors will be pedalling their bicycles on that day. There's an item there about how we're trying to incentivise better use of the bus fleet through a cost reduction in fares as a trial. But really the thinking in public transport's got to be a lot more innovative than driving the current sort of bus fleet profile as the model for the future. We need to think way more laterally than that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Martin. And I do, from my position and the rest of Council, we really do appreciate the way you are tackling this. Certainly the regional mayors are really appreciative of the way you're tackling this in a very innovative way. We know this is an area that has tremendous scope, especially around climate change, and you're doing an absolutely fantastic job, you and Charlie. Charlie, do you want to comment before we go to questions?
Just to say, one of the highlights for me was the verbal report by Craig Little, who obviously requested support for his application to the PGF fund to carry on with repairs to the Waikato-Moana Road.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there was one other point I did mean to touch on, and I'd be remiss in not doing so before we hand it over, is the, thank you Charlie for reminding me about that. The equally exciting news was the arrival of a train at the port carrying logs on Sunday evening. I went down and witnessed that.
Oh, you went?
And yeah, we have a lot of enthusiasm about carrying on that journey back towards Gisborne. And the item that I put on the agenda for discussion at this meeting last time was a deputation from Guy Wellwood, who's championing that cause. Rex and I are going to be meeting with Guy tomorrow. Essentially what they are after is political support from this council for their PGF application for that. It's going to be a big challenge. And anyway, Rex and I will meet with Guy and report back to you further about the next steps but really it's just political support is all that's being asked for, no financial commitment from this council. At this stage at least, it's that in principle level.
Questions?
Thank you for putting the trains into the mix of your report, because that was exactly where I was coming to.
Right.
But I thought it was worthy to note that we had the first train run, and that's as a consequence of the great leadership provided by the former chair of the Regional Council, and I expect, having set that benchmark, that you'll want to be able to exceed that, because we don't want to go back backwards. But my point is just a question. Now that we're starting to get more movement by rail, I do think that we have forgotten that all of these crossings that we have by road is an impediment to the railway line. And we started, as a committee, started to think about how can improve the efficiency of rail and how it integrates with the road network. If you think about the railway line coming through Napier, we've got all of these crossings, all of which are danger points, all of which are impediments to everybody. Are we going to, as a Transport Committee, going to have a look about how it might improve the efficiency of rail and how it travels through rural and urban areas? I think it's a question which is worthy of some consideration. Can't do it in the short term, but in the long term, I think it's a point that you could make some really good progress on.
Thank you, Councillor Barker.
Any other questions? So we have a question or
Yes,
a comment?
Mr Chair, just a question in regard to the work programme for the Transport Committee, and I wonder whether it's worth inserting in that work programme issues around climate change and how the transport network is responding to climate change, both mitigation
And adaptation.
and adaptation. That's possibly a discussion for another day.
Okay, right, we have a mover. Martin, you'll move. Charlie, you'll second. So any other discussion before we put the motion? No other discussion? So we move in a seconder. All those in favour of receiving this report? Aye?
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. So we have item 8, Councillor Barker's knows the motion, so I'm going to hand the floor to you, Councillor Barker.
I'll just say, Chair, I'm happy to move, but I think the motion will need someone to second it. Once someone's seconded, if there is a seconder, then I'll happily speak to the motion.
Okay. So we have Neil will second, so you have a mover and a seconder. So the floor is now yours.
Oh, thank you. This notice of motion comes from a number of areas. Firstly, during the election campaign, I noted that a number of candidates for office made great play about how no one knew what the Regional Council did. And this is based on a number of doorstep interviews, which was fair enough, but it depends on how you ask the question, of course. If you say, do you know what the Regional Council does? A lot of people are going to say, well, no, I don't, because I don't want to be proven wrong. Are you with me? But so it wasn't a very fair test, but however, it did highlight the point that the Regional Council does hide its light under a bushel, if I can use that expression. It doesn't describe what it is. So Regional Council, well, you kind of get the region. Council, what does councils do? People get a bit confused about councils. They do rates and rubbish and things. And what is a regional one? Does that do it on a regional scale? So I thought we should, in actual fact, look at our name and describe ourselves as what we actually do. And we've got a couple of very good examples. We've got Environment Canterbury, Environment Southland. And when I looked at that, I thought, well, isn't that the answer? Aren't we actually a council which is about the environment? We are about the environment. We measure air quality, water quality, soil. We deal with riparian margins. We deal with restoring wetlands. We look at hills and how to manage the hills. We look at the ocean. We don't do as much as we should do out there. Neil will tell us, and he's right. We've got control of the 12-mile zone, but we don't do much out there. We're responsible for climate adaptation, climate change. Well, all of these things are about the environment. So if we would call ourselves Environment Hawke's Bay, then people would know what we do. And it would also be a marker for us to say, well, this is what we call of ourselves. We must live up to this name. So it would also be a positive signal to the outside, and also for something for us to look to, aspire to make sure we do. And it is the core of what we do. We do economic development, of course. We do involve ourselves in tourism. We are committed to civil offence, and as we heard from the previous report, we're committed to lead on transport. But the core of our business is the environment. So what I'm asking in this motion is the Chief Executive to come back with a report and outline to us what the implications are and presumably the costs are for having a change of name to Environment Hawke's Bay. I don't envisage the costs being great. I see the logo that we've got there. I don't see any need to change the logo. It's all done electronically. Let's just have an electronic hand come out, pull up the words Hawke's Bay Regional Council, take them away, and then the electronic hand come back and put in Environment Hawke's Bay. Bingo, we've got it. We don't need to change every truck that we've got with its logo overnight. As we turn them over, we put a new logo on them. We don't need to make big costs on this, as long as we plan it and do it sensibly. So I think it's well worthwhile. I think we do need to have a name which challenges us to live up to what we're supposed to do, clearly identifies who we are, and distinguishes us from other councils, because it tells us we're different from the Napier City Council, because if this is accepted, Environment Hawke's Bay. So I commend the name change option to you. I think all we're asking for is for the Chief Executive to have a look at it and come back for a considered opinion and decision later. So.
Neil, do you wish to add to that?
Well, I will add, thank you, Mr. Chair, and in supporting the recommendation, I've given some significant thought about that, because I was conscious of the cost of doing so, and even though the electronic hand may appear like Santa Claus, it won't, and there will be a major cost to that. But I think what potentially we can do as a part of this exercise is to refocus, or at least reinforce the focus of this council on its environmental imperatives. And this goes back, I can recall the same discussion actually 20 years ago. Councillor Barker, we're having exactly the same discussion, and decided at that point that the more generic council tag was appropriate. But I think in 2020, and with 2020 hindsight, we probably should have made that move to be consistent with those councils that had indeed made the jumped the shark and moved on. And what we've got now is an opportunity to reinforce, both from around this table, the governance and staff perspective, is that our highest priority ought to be the environment. We've got a situation where the demands on the council's resources will be many and across the board, particularly in the light of our strength and balance sheet. There'll be demands everywhere for resources, and I'm encouraged to support this opportunity to reinforce the very important tasks we have in defending ourselves from the environment in its various forms, and to promote the environmental outcomes we want to see over the next 10 years and 20 years. So by 2040, we can look back and say, yes, we have met the challenge of Environment Hawke's Bay.
Thank you, Neil. So the motion is that the Chief Executive has a look at this and brings it back to the Corporate and Strategic Committee, but which is pretty innocent in itself. Are there any questions for either of these two before? Yes, Craig.
Actually, question. That's a fabulous dissertation earlier, but it's just a question of the CEO, if I may, just at a real first response. Would this mean a lot of CEO resource time or effort? Because we know, quite stretched at the moment, and as Councillor Barker said, it's not priority one, but it's a good priority. But is it a big deal or not?
Yeah, you can answer that, but it's answered in the motion, really. But
just to say that the motion directs it to the Chief Executive.
Yes,
I realise that.
And the Chief Executive is well within his power to delegate it to whoever he wishes to, and the report will come back. But I was being technically correct, because the Chief Executive has control of the agenda. The Chief Executive should bring papers here, so he can delegate to whoever he wishes to. And because other councils have done it, I think they'll simply go and get advice from them, and it'll be quite a simple report to bring back to. People have done it. What does it mean? What's it cost? etc.
What's the cost is relevant, Martin?
Open line.
If I could just speak briefly to the motion.
Well, wait, we're just doing questions first and then we'll... Right. So, okay, but we have a mover and a seconder. Right, speak to the motion.
Thank you. I understand the original motivation for this. I am, to a significant degree, on board with the proposal, and I welcome the paper. I am equally concerned about the costs. Part of me would probably wish to reserve a discussion. Well, I have some reservations around our other functions. I also believe that we need to be socially and economically enabling. Our Local Government Act functions, as reintroduced last year to the statute, traverse social, cultural, economic and environmental wellbeing. I'm just conscious of that, and I'm just signalling that I would want to be satisfied that in a rebranding exercise what we're doing is functionally useful, that we don't lose sight of the broader compass of our functions, that's all. And so I've got a very open mind about it at the moment. I welcome the paper, but I do have some reservations at present.
Yeah, I like to speak in support of the motion. I think environment speaks wonders for what we do. If I walked around Wairoa, I really got to say that people don't really know what the regional council does. They have memories of catchment boards and rabbit boards and everything else, but not what a regional council does. It's just got a regional council area. And I go back to the elections. When I went to the council forum, the public forum, it was no one invited me because they said, no, the regional council's got nothing to do with Wairoa.
Says it all.
Does say it all. Charlie does have a habit of saying it all and getting it right. Okay,
I think just as another point, it would take a whole lot of impetus out of having to publicise what we do. Because the name does, picture worth 1,000 words, and so does this particular word.
So I think there's general support for the motion that it's the beginning of a journey. It may end with the chief executive because he might come back and say it's going to cost $2 million, or it may come back and say no, this is just the magical hand that will be easy. So okay, all those in favour of the motion as it stands here? Aye. Against? Yep. Against? Well, you didn't speak. Do you want to speak now?
You didn't ask?
No, I did.
No, look, in my short time here, I continually hear from staff management about the stress and pressure on resources, and I understand it's just an investigation, but nonetheless that's still asking more from James and his team. So I think at this stage with, we've all got ambitions on everything else we want to achieve, and I'm just not willing to put more extra work onto the staff that's probably not as important at this time.
I need to get you sitting over there so I can see you. It's a bit out of order that we did that, but nevertheless I wanted to hear from you.
That's classic.
So, what?
It was just classic Rex chairmanship.
Absolutely is. Everyone's got to have their say. So the motion is carried with one vote against. Okay, let's go to item 9. Fixing a common seal. Rick, this is your moment.
Any questions?
Well, certainly. Questions?
Yeah. Just a question of staff. I'm not sure who's handling the paper. Liz, is that you? Or?
Depends what the question is, Councillor. I do some of these.
You give a question to me and I'll pass it on.
Pass it on to the pilot. Throw it out the window. So we've got new staff coming on board. Is that the reason for the delegations?
Yes.
And is there a particular reason that there's a list of staff, for example, A. Claire, D. Okros, Miss M. Brinsden, they're obviously having multiple delegations. Can you just give us a background as to who they are and why they appear with new delegations?
I'm probably going to ask Chris to do that because I think they're mainly his staff.
So those two particular staff, one is an engineer who's based in this building whose primary task at the moment is to do asset condition assessments of our stock banks and other infrastructure. So may need to enter various properties to undertake that activity. Brinsden is our new ranger, so he's providing sort of informal security around our rivers and regional park type areas, and again needs to access certain areas, be able to ask people to move on, to initiate any trespass activities that he may need to, and so they're the reasons that they have those warrants.
Can I just follow up, Mr. Chair? I see that Mr. Brinsden is delegated under the Local Government Act twice. Is there a reason for that, and what are the delegations that are assumed under the Local Government Act? Do you know?
So the precise, I'd have to get back to you on the precise delegation there. That does appear that there's a double up.
No,
It's 32(1) and 32B on Schedule 7. So it'd be two separate delegations.
Yeah, there will be.
So those exact delegations I'd need to get back to you on,
Sure.
on specifically what they allow.
Well, someone go up on the local government and pull them up. So
Good question, Daniel, but it's really good that we've got that ranger in place. Really good.
Could I just ask a question? We went through some time ago and we outlined all the delegations that the council gives to. Said what all the tasks were, and also there's a great big list of them. And I just assumed from this that we had those delegations given, and this was simply populating new staff into those delegations, that we'd already approved the delegations. Now, if that's the case, then this is just a pro forma thing, just to notice that these are the people who hold the delegations which we've already approved.
Is that the case?
If that's the case, I just want him to, Chris, to confirm that is exactly the case, because that's what I assume from here. There's no change to that.
That's my understanding of this.
Right.
And the
You happy
reason
with
it
that,
comes to council is because the council seal is actually placed on the warrant.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we're giving, so the person here, you've now got this is your sheriff's badge.
You happy with that, Neil?
Well, it's just good to know if we've got new staff coming on board and that they're being delegated accordingly. It's good to know that we've got those people.
Okay, are there any more other questions? Otherwise, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder?
Yep.
Who's the seconder? You, Jarrett? Any other speakers on that?
Just the name, or would it be better to call it an instrumental delegation rather than affixing the seal?
Can I just explain that? The reason it is, it's a delegation. The person acts on a warrant, and the warrant has to have the council seal on it. And the council seal
Then it's
is...
a warrant.
No,
But it's not
the
only-
council seal is the council's signature. So we have to approve the use of the council's signature on these things. So that's what it's doing, approve.
So our seal's got a separate number for each time it's stamped.
How we get the
I've
number?
just lost it.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Can I just,
So you keep track of it.
Yeah, so
I've
that's
got the
just
local
a
government act
tricky thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you know which seal it is?
Okay, sorry, I just lost my my technology. Turned down.
Oh, another problem with our technology. There's
Nevertheless.
two so far today.
Nevertheless, it's getting back.
Well,
So,
three so far today.
so we have a move to fix the common seal. We have a seconder.
Yeah.
All those in favour?
Yeah.
Aye. Against? Thank you very much. Item 10, policy on appointments. This is one we discussed. Are the appointments of directors for HBRIC. Tom, do you want to talk to this? It is just the policy, isn't it?
No, you've got three options.
Three
here.
options, yeah.
I think it'd be best, Chair, if you just said to us which option you prefer. I know what it is, so I think
6.
we all know what it is. Well, let's just have 6 and let's cut the chase and say what names you're going to put on them.
I think a little bit of background from the point of view of the public's position. Previously, directors of HBRICs were selected by committee. I was never in favour of that, of having an independent committee, because I really feel that councillors are in fact, they are elected by their respective areas, and they are essentially a board of directors, and I don't see why anyone should usurp that authority. So it's my quite strong position, and I'm pretty sure it's supported by some of you, is that the council should select and elect the directors on HBRIC. And we've had discussions on that previously, Our nominations for council directors on HBRIC was Rick, Craig and Neil. Is there any contention around that, or is there any change in our views on that? Otherwise that is, number 6.
Could I just respond to you on that? The reason I think there's a shift here is that when we were originally dealing with HBRIC, it was very much more a commercially focused entity running enterprises and, for example, dealing with the Ruatanova Dam. HBRIC is now doing a significantly different task, so therefore we're in a significantly different environment, and I think a change in the way in which we appoint people is warranted.
There is that, but I am fundamentally for us doing it as a fundamental to me. Does anyone have a different view and think that we should have a independent committee?
Mr. Chair, no, I don't. I agree with your sentiments and your rationale. At the end of the day, there's been some large changes in the balance sheet of the Regional Council, or Environment Hawke's Bay perhaps, and
I like that.
Also the ambitions or aspirations I think are evolving for HBRIC. I think we're still yet to, it may change some years down the track, but I think at the end of the day this table is accountable to the public for that balance sheet and for the decisions. I do note in there that all the directors must follow NZX type rules, etc., of best practice. So I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Chair, that this council appoint the directors for HBRIC.
Chairman?
Yes, Martin.
There's a lot of context here that I'm working towards coming up to speed with, but there is also a public excluded item related to this. I'm loath to move straight to option 6, if you like, without understanding some context. I'm wondering if we might benefit from a broader discussion of the relationship between this policy and the public excluded item in that session. But one thing I would note on the process is that the policy that we've adopted, I don't think we can by resolution now simply dispense with that policy. We need to change the policy. But it does provide for the council to make the appointments. What it provides for also is for us to establish an appointments committee to make recommendations to us in the same way that our subcommittees make recommendations to the council. So under the policy, we still make the final decision. There is just a step of a broader canvassing of options, including by 2 councillors who would be on that appointments committee, and I think a more thorough and robust process for what is an incredibly important vehicle owned by this council, which, while currently confined to, say, holding shares in the port, could have all sorts of roles to play in the future with Right Tree, Right Place, with the land, the Wairoa project, for example, and commercial partnerships around, other activities, including, water augmentation, whatever it might be. So I'm not feeling comfortable to go straight to option 6 yet, because I'm just lacking the backstory, and I'm just making the point that the appointments committee process seems to me to be more robust and leaves the final decision in our hands. Do we need to do this? Do we need to make the appointments of directors right now?
Yes.
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 How did that come about? Given our policy suggests that we would have established a committee to make some recommendations.
Yeah, I guess this is about changing that as a council resolution that we are about to change. It's whether you want to change it. I mean, we need the discussion on that, because that's the fundamental. Martin suggesting that we shouldn't change, that it's a more robust. I'm saying that I don't want to delegate council's responsibility on these issues, and I think council is quite capable of making this decision themselves without getting independent people. That's the discussion. Any other views on it? I mean, should we vote on that as a fundamental straight up, Tom? Just get that out of the way first. The fact whether we do the policy, whether we stick with the policy, or whether we move to the council makes the recommendation, makes the appointments.
So look, I'm not intimately familiar with the paper, and I'm happy for Joe Lawrence to jump in. Did you author this, Joe?
Yeah.
Well, it's not unusual for entities to be able to suspend a policy if that's what is required here. You have a policy as a guideline. It doesn't lock you forever in a straitjacket. And if the circumstances in the mind of this council is sufficient to push it aside for this particular occasion, well, then it can do so. And I would have thought that given the change in circumstances, this was an ideal time. Instead of going all around the traps, leap by leap by leap, we can simply go straight to go and make a decision, because we know what the decision is going to be, and we know, as the chair has said, this council is going to make the decision, the final one, and it's very clear what this council's view is today. So if we went through the policy hoops, we'd be going through a charade.
Yeah.
And I'd object to that.
Well, it's not clear to me what the decision of this council would be on the appointments. The paper recommends that to adhere to the policy, we'd go with a different option, but says that if we'd had previous discussions about who would be the appointments, the option that's being advanced by the chair would be preferred. I'm just feeling a little bit backed into a corner on this. I haven't had sufficient time to work with my colleagues around this issue. I'm not even clear how long these appointments would be for. So I'm signalling my reservations, and I'll just leave it there.
Just one point, when we first met and started to assign everyone to committees, this one was discussed, and these same names were put forward. It was put on hold until some issues with the company's office were sorted. So that the indication of who was to go on it, or the preferred willing parties, that was then, which was, I think, October, November-ish, when we did all those other allocations. That this one was, albeit signed off, other than some issues with Wellington company's office or tax office or something to be sorted.
That's right.
And there's two other things which are important to this. Firstly, Councillor Peter Bevan is no longer with us.
I know.
The position is vacant.
Still alive.
Second, the chair has indicated very clearly he does not wish to be on this board anymore. He wants to get off. So there's two other vacancies. So we are in my view, a pretty parlous situation. Now, if we wish to, with all of that knowledge, go around the traps of appointing a committee, having deliberations, consulting the Oracle, setting up smoke signals, then come back here for a thing, well, I just think that's it's not very helpful. I just think we do have a board, an important board to us, which is almost empty. I think we have to move quickly.
It's not empty, but it's about to. Tom, you've got a...
So look, I've just did a brief discussion. My understanding is that HBRIC is currently in court. And I suppose there's nothing necessarily stopping an interim appointment if that's a step. And just to just confirm, there is to be quite an extensive workshop on the 4th or on the 5th of next month around the investment strategy.
Yes.
And so that will be perhaps give you an opportunity to have a broader understanding and better perspective on that, and whether you want to come back and revisit the decision subsequent.
Well, actually, I was trying to cut to the chase on this. We have HBRIC, which has a substantial amount of our investment. It owns 55% of the port. It's got a substantial amount of cash, which it's invested. We have this council which has 4 or 5 people that are eminently capable and experienced to be directors. We have 3, and Craig's right, which we have had a lot of discussion about, that we think you would have on any board in the country. And I just think we just get on with it. It's been very successful, HBRIC. It was in a standalone position, but then it did do the port. So it has really good independent person on it, who would be the independent chair, has an outstanding world-class management CEO, And we just need to have some really strong governance people from this board here sitting on that board representing us. That's what we discussed, that's what we talked about. I don't see where we're going with this.
But could just go back to Tom's advice. Tom said that currently the board is in quorum.
The count of Councillor Bevans.
If that's the case, we need to act.
Yeah. Just with him gone, because I haven't gone. Is that right?
That's the advice I've received.
Okay.
So I think you just need to move a motion, Chair, put it on the deck and let's go.
Okay, well, I mean, this is done public excluded too. It's a double up, really, isn't it?
No, you need to nominate.
No, it's not.
No.
Not a double up. So, well, then I will move in the recommendations, item 6, accepts the nomination and appoints the councillors, and
You need to put 3 names in there.
3 names, councillors Barker, Foss, and Curtis, to be representing us on the board of HBRIC. Do I have a seconder? Seconder? Do you wish to speak? I've already spoken.
I think for what we've spoken about before, and Peter Bevan no longer being here, I think it's very urgent that we move on this. At this point in time, we have very capable people that we actually can fill in those 3 positions. We may not always have that, or this council may not always have that. So, therefore, it may be prudent to actually have a way of actually appointing those outside if required. But I support the motion as it stands.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
I'm just grateful to Councillor Foss for reminding me of the earlier discussion, which I have to confess was amidst a lot of discussions about appointments.
Yep.
And that has, to an extent, addressed my concerns about the process. So
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Good.
Need to move 3 and 6.
3 and 6. So, do we need to move 3 and 6? I'm advised.
That's right.
Yes. Because we did adopt that. So, okay, so are you happy as the mover and seconder?
Yep.
3 and 6, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It is carried. We'll do the paperwork later. Cool. Okie doke. Where are we?
Security activities,
Significant activities.
item 11.
Item 11. Right. You would have all read this. It was incredibly it does enforce Rick's previous point that there is a huge amount of stuff going on here. To council. So, any questions for staff on this?
Great report. I'm happy just to move the report be received, Chair.
Mr. Chair, question.
Yes, questions, Neil?
Mr. Chair, if I can take Southern Catchment, I guess, Ian, that might be your neck of the woods.
Which number, Councillor?
On page 40.
43.
43.
But there's a number beside the thing, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's number 9, 2 minor changes made to Route 12, Napier Hastings. What I'm interested to know in terms of the paper structure is that you've got that specific reference to public transport against Southern Catchment. Is it the intent to have the respective elements of transport delivery per catchment? What's the thinking behind including the public transport element there?
Very good question, Councillor, and I can't answer that because I haven't structured the design of this. Certainly, place-based reporting of our activities is probably the intent, but I'm not sure whether Mrs. Hooper or
I suspect
Mr.
it
Scanlon
should just
can
be in
help.
the central catchment
It should be in the central
rather than the
catchment.
southern. It's just
Yeah.
a mistake.
In the wrong place.
Well, a good general question though is obviously there are generic issues that cover all catchments and from time to time. What is the best way of handling those?
Well, it certainly begs the question of is the report's a combination of what appears to be place-based reporting as well as activity-based reporting, and what's most helpful.
Sure. I wonder, and I might come and have a chat about the structure of these reports because I'm I'd be really interested to see whether there's room for example, our climate change response as being a separate work strand that's identified and reported as such. Other sort of technical discussions which my usual processes can't avoid.
Could you just respond to Neil? Could you just pause on the climate changes? I had the discussion, Henry and I today, with Chris and Ian about how we will change our reporting processes, and we're looking forward to having a really clear reporting system to you, forward-looking, time-based, etc. So we've got our eyes fixed on everything. So we'll come back to you on that in the next month or two.
Mr. Chair, it's a great report. It's sort of been evolving over time. I'm pleased to see it. I'm probably just up to the next step of evolution in terms of structure. That's the only comment.
Evolutionary.
So I have a question. The 44 hectares of coastal erosion of hillside, I'd be interested confidentially to know how much we paid. As everybody knows, I don't see why landowners aren't responsible for their eroding hills. I'm responsible for mine and my small plot of land. I just don't want us to develop a strategy where everyone's problem gets passed on to the ratepayers. So I'm quite interested to know how much we paid for that. Don't tell me now, but later on.
Sure, and perhaps, Councillor, could I suggest that there is a much bigger story to tell on this particular acquisition.
Well, there is, of course.
That's not included in one sentence. So
okay, well, I'd like to know the story.
We could explain the bigger picture.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about what the bigger picture is later.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, Craig? And
Comment? Or a question?
Yeah, you can comment as well. Go to Craig. No, well then you, Craig. Okay.
Yeah, just a congratulations, if you like, to staff on the update with Plan Change 6 implementation. I can tell you, post the last meeting that we did get an update from James that there's an air of positivity amongst those farmers in particular that were involved with that we are now on the right track. And yeah, I'm certainly doing my best along with them to, I guess, filter that positivity down to the rest of the community down there and hope we get to the end goal that we're trying to achieve by May.
Thanks, Will. Craig?
Yeah, absolutely, reinforce that. Just questions around predator-free Hawke's Bay. Possum-free Hawke's Bay. That's number 33 to 35. It's on the northern catchment, I think. Is it possible, I guess via the committee, to have reports on current status of possum count across our area, or last trends recently, or are there any issues to be concerned about in any particular parts of the environment Hawke's Bay region?
Got it. My goodness, he's got it.
I just get anecdotal reports of people to me saying that they are concerned. So, but I can't really respond factually. So it'd be good to be able to have something to point to, which is public, that they can refer to as well.
So, Kat, it's a really good question. And actually, I was just talking to the biosecurity manager this week about the need to bring back to you an update on our predator-free program across the region, because there is some changing environment, not impacting our deliverables for this long-term plan, but certainly into the future, that we want to engage you in. And hey, look, usefully we could update you broadly on our biosecurity activities. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that in our two workshops that we had around our general operations, but very happy to do that.
Oh, that would be great. And if you're able, I realise it's not yourselves, but if you're able to get information or comment on the rabbit situation and any rabbit virus that's been released by the council and the success or otherwise of that, I think that would be of interest to councillors.
Sure.
Well, have possums and rabbits. How about goats?
Yeah.
Well, anything.
You've got a plan for goats.
Just say I'll do my best on rabbits with my new
What about
rifle.
two-legged termites?
Just one quick thing, HBRICs, there is actually a lot of concern and discussion in our region about HBRICs. The fact that it has no teeth has been something I've been raising. But I did speak to the Mayor of Hastings. She's very concerned about the spread. Everyone is. We just got to get to a stage where we draw a red line around the land, the productive land, 6A, 5A, 14, 15 and all the other high classes of land, and say enough's enough. Can't go there. Because then the developers won't go there, because that is the trend. Developer buys an orchard, moans and moans for 10 years to the local government, and we are seeing creep. There's just no doubt about it. We're seeing huge creep, and I know Peter Bevan this was his kaupapa, and this was we've lost him now, but all of us got to pick this up, because we've got to draw the red line somewhere. So just make that comment. Is there any other comment or thoughts, Neil, and then Charles? Or Charles first?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the one about the, Chair, about the predator-free Hawke's Bay, because we have a report on at some stage on the TB control and how that's going. There was an outbreak, of course, around the Lake Tutura area, and a lot of the concerns that the farmers had up there is that it's actually the forestry aren't controlling their predators. So that they're actually creating a little gap for predators to get through onto the farming property. So if you got any...
Yes, certainly we've been actively discussing that conversation, that issue, in terms of the role of forestry as potentially a vector for TB, given that it's not subject to many of the controls that other landowners or land uses are. So, yeah, I think it'd be a useful discussion.
That is an example of our core business.
Yeah.
We need to do that well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That was your election platform.
Was. You looked,
Neil, quickly, take over.
He looked out the back door and he saw a possum. Oh, that's what I'm going to run on.
Quickly, Neil.
Mark not quite as down, I was there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ian, I think you might have the answers here. 69, 70, 71, Marine Coastal. I went fishing on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, this is serious.
I didn't catch any fish.
Did you put any bait on your hook?
Despite putting a lot of burley over the side. Just a question in regard to the Bay of Plenty decision, court decision, and fisheries management. I can't recall whether we in fact put a work stream in process around our potential courses of action around fisheries management and biodiversity in Hawke Bay. Can you help me with where we landed?
So there's a particular piece of work that the sector is doing generally in a group that I'm part of to assess the implications and likely costs and roles and responsibilities with regard to the decision that's currently being worked on. Because obviously it's not unique to Hawke's Bay, it's something that every regional council potentially has to address. So we're working through implications to bring you back some advice.
Would it be possible to include that as a part of work stream in that under those sections there? Would that be okay to bring that report back to us on a regular basis?
Okay, yeah, good. If you could do that, that'd be good. Look, Councillor, we need to move on.
I'll move the report be received.
Thank you, Rack. Would you have a second? Charlie, will you second? I think we've all had a bit of a fair go at this. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. Discussion, minor items on the agenda. We have two from Rick. Buses.
About 10 days ago, I was at the intersection of Eastbourne and Warren Street when a car went straight through a giveaway sign, collected someone else on the way to the mosque, and there were people staggering all over the place. Just so happened there was two go buses in the area, and the two go bus drivers came out, and I was deeply impressed by how smoothly and how well they handled the situation. They'd obviously been on a first aid course, obviously knew how to keep people calm, keep the place under control until the police and everybody arrived. And I just thought it was worthwhile noting that our bus drivers did a fine job on that occasion, and I'd like someone to pass on to the bus drivers our thank you, and to say it's good to see that they're well trained in first aid, managing stressful situations, and I thought they were a credit to Go Bus, actually. They were wonderful.
Thank you, Rick. Nice. That's very excellent. Dates?
Due to the failure of our system, I should have raised an issue about the date of the Environment Committee in June. I'm just giving notice to people that the date is inconvenient to me, and I'm looking to shift the one in June, if that's okay. I'll come back to you with an alternative. I've asked the Chief Executive to look at other options, but I've got a sort of strong personal commitment at that time, so I'm just looking to make a change on that. Come back to you sometime later. This is an early warning.
Thank you, Rick. And so that is the end of our public meeting. Thank you, everyone. We've got a little bit of time. We need to public excluded, so we won't finish. We won't call it the end of our meeting because we're going to carry on. So thank you very much to the public for attending.
So if you want someone to move to go to public excluded?
Oh, we need to move public excluded.
I'll move to go to public excluded.
Mover, seconder. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Huggy. We love to have you here, mate.